our analysis is complete here. So now we can run this regression. We can see that compound is statistically significant. I know that because this value is bigger than 1.96. The others are not. So I'm going to drop the others, repeat this analysis, just using compound. Right, and now we have a statistically significant result. This is quite difficult to interpret, but what it's showing is that the more positive the write-up is associated with a higher price. So being more positive is associated with a higher price in your property. It does not show a causal relationship, right? That's just basic economic stuff, but it does show that there is a relationship. All right, so now we've looked at those things. Another way we might want to analyze this is by comparing room type and price. There are different rooms available in this data set. We want to see if having one room or the whole house, how those affect how much you can charge. So there's 4 different kinds of rooms. Let's take a look. So we've used this same code before. Make a box plot by room type. Before we did by bed. So we can see a whole home, hotel, private room, or shared room. Just looking at this, it makes sense. The shared room is the lower one, but there's still some shared rooms that are quite expensive. And let's do a regression here. What's nice is that there are 4 different kinds of properties. If you were doing this in Excel, you would need to create dummy variables for each of these. So 1 if hotel, 1 if private room. But Python and the stats models package can do that for us. So it automatically broke these out. Hotel room, private room, shared room. The downside of having it doing automatically is that it always compares relative to the first entry. And so we don't want to compare against that. What if we actually want to use our comparison group as a hotel room? And so that's what we're doing here. We do need to import a new module called Patsy, and we're going to use this feature of Patsy called treatment, which will allow us to declare that our treatment reference should be the hotel room. So relative to hotel room, how much more do you charge for a full property? So now I can see entire house. An entire house is associated with a $53 increase over a hotel room. Fantastic. So we've looked at the beds before, and we looked at the different property sizes. Now we can put those together. We can actually see what happens if you look at beds and properties all at the same time. It's a little wild. You have a lot of things here, but there's some interesting connections here. Like what happens if you have a shared room and a futon, or a private room and a futon, a hotel room and a real bed? So we get all these different values. Most of these are not statistically significant. But the point here is not to focus on that, but we just did this analysis, pretty sophisticated analysis, comparing these multiple dimensions very simply with this. It's also extremely fast to get the result here for 41,000 things. And now I'm just repeating the same thing, but in this last version, I'm declaring what I want my reference case to be. So in economics, we would call this using instrumental variables. So I'm declaring what I want to use my instrumental variables to be, and the reference case for each. The value of doing this is that you can start to look at how different things connect, and if that interaction is useful. This type of interaction effect is often used to help suss out things like causation. Is there a causal relationship between two things? You can also use other types of regression besides OLS if you want to investigate things like causation. Okay. Then I've got some additional some books and some other things that we can do here, but what we've gone through is actually quite a bit of taking the things that we've learned before and applying them to a real data set to find real insights. So if we were looking to rent a property or to sell properties in Toronto, we could use this information to understand if we should rent out the entire property or just part of the property, or what type of beds that we should buy and put into our property. Right. The code is all very straightforward. It shows the real value of Python and its readability. You can tell exactly what I'm doing in each cell and how I'm going through the analysis. That's a huge difference between this type of analysis and Excel. So in Excel, you would just see the outputs. You wouldn't always see what I put as my inputs. But this is a notebook that I could pass off to another analyst, and they could see the exact thought pattern I went through, as well as things like my conclusions and any graphs that we make.